Well, shall we call the meeting to order since it's after 7 o'clock?
Yes.
All right, then I'd like to call the meeting to order. City of San Marino appreciates your attendance. Community interest provides the Public Safety Commission with valuable information regarding issues in the community. I'm not sure if we have any members of the community present. I would encourage anyone who is present to turn on your camera so we can communicate with one another more easily. Good evening. Hello, Vanessa. I'm going to just go quickly through some of the administrative materials that I think we normally are supposed to refer to before we begin the meeting. Beginning in July, regular meetings of the Public Safety Commission will be held on the first Monday of every month. So the next meeting of the Public Safety Commission will be on July 6th at 7 p.m. I'm not sure, maybe either Vanessa or Jennifer can advise, do I need to refer to read the pursuant to executive orders material? Or can we rely upon the public's?
No, it's posted. You shouldn't have to read it.
All right, then I'm going to move. I do want to, however, make sure that the public understands that if they wish, they can either email comments or questions, or they can electronically submit them during this Zoom teleconference. There should be a chat button at the bottom of the screen. If you do have a question that you'd like to raise during the meeting, during the appropriate point in time, or if you have a comment you'd like to make, if you would alert us to that through entering a chat, and then either Jennifer or Vanessa will be able to take note of that, and when the time comes, we'll know who to invite to participate.
Chair Bogue. Anyone who would like to make a comment, they need to make sure that they do submit their comment prior to the open public comment. And if they want to speak on a specific item, it needs to be before the end of that item.
And when you're making that submission using chat, would you be kind enough to give us your name and your address so that we'll have that in the same manner we would if you were here in person? I believe that's what we need, isn't it, Jennifer?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Well, if you would, I'm going to call the meeting to order at this point in time, and we will start with a Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Chang is going to honor this by having the flag available. So I guess if we can all stand, and everyone can see our belts. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Good job, Hunter.
Thank you.
He's getting ready for next month.
Yeah, this is a little flag. Yeah, I got my big one outside.
Who's calling the roll? Is Jennifer or Vanessa?
I am. Just a moment. Okay. Chair Bogue.
Here.
Vice Chair Chang.
Here.
Commissioner Eugene Ramirez.
Here.
Commissioner Peter Leffler.
Yep, connected.
Commissioner Jeff Buzzell. Alternate James Lynn. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. The agenda was posted 72 hours prior to the meeting at the following locations: City Hall, 2200 Huntington Drive; Lowell Public Library, 1890 Huntington Drive; and the Recreation Department, 1560 Pascalito Drive. The agenda is also posted on the city's website. Do we have any written communications from the public or writings that need to be distributed? I have not received anything, so I'm going to make the assumption that there are none. Public comments are invited. Those having to do with items that are not specifically on the agenda will be taken, I believe, now. And those that are regard a specific agenda item, I'd ask that the public wait until that agenda item is raised. Are there any public comments at this time?
We have not received any by email. We don't show any in the chat, and we don't currently show anyone raising their hand.
Okay. I see 12 screens, and I don't see any member of the public. Are there additional participants? Okay, so we probably don't have anyone physically with us at the moment. All right, thank you. Commissioner reports. It's an opportunity for members of the commission to inform the public of any meetings or conferences they may have attended. Okay. All right, hearing nothing, then we're going to move on to department reports. First department report will be the report of the police department. Chief Incontro? Your mic is still muted. Can someone unmute the chief? There we go.
How about that?
Hey, great, thank you.
All right. I apologize. You've had a chance to read our report regarding the crime. As you noticed, we've had an increase of up to 47% on Part 1 crimes. And that worked out to about 46 additional crimes. Most of those were in commercial burglaries, where we had 12 compared to last year, and also in larcenies, which are thefts. And those thefts, as indicated in the report, vary from gardening equipment, package theft, theft from unlocked vehicles. And we've made several attempts to contact gardeners, let them know about the crime that's going on. We're preparing a letter that's going to be going out to them, explaining, and we're going to drive around and pass out the letter so they can secure their gardening equipment. The package thefts, originally planning was working on trying to find a connection with Amazon. So we've taken that over because we want to be able to contact Amazon to have lockers available for them. Perhaps it'll be at a city facility, or we might have a business that would like to partner with us. And then we've put out a lot of information. We've had special details regarding the thefts from vehicles. We were able to do 2 videos about the crime and about ways to prevent the crime. We're not alone in this. If you read the news during this COVID crisis, some cities are having violent crime. We're having property crime. And we're not immune compared to all the other departments in other cities. We also have to deal with the fact that there's 0 bail. And for anything less than a burglary, a residential burglary, to a murder, all someone has to do, we arrest them, we give them a ticket, and off they go. We have not had multiple people arrested on the same day, but we have arrested a couple of the same people for the same charge, but on different days. Nice thing is, the state Supreme Court in looking at how the judicial process is working now, just took away the zero bail. So that's going to be helpful for us. However, bail is very low. Some of the other areas are traffic enforcement, and I can talk about that a little bit more about what our traffic plan will be. And other thing regarding crime is we're working with block captains. We've been calling them on a fairly regular basis, making sure they're okay, seeing if they need additional information. They've been sharing that with the residents. And we have 2 residents that are going to support us in putting a block captain meeting together. It will be a Zoom meeting. And Sergeant Danny Gutierrez is going to be coordinating that. So that'll just be for the block captains to update them. So we think that will be a very positive thing for us to do. You had requested a discussion about our priority initiative regarding traffic safety. Preliminarily, the council has recommended for approval. It has not been approved, but they've recommended for approval to have us move forward on the priority initiative for traffic safety. And that will give us the ability to provide specific resources towards the reduction of injury traffic collisions, a creation of a traffic safety education programs for all of our schools and for our community, and the integration of traffic safety education enforcement as part of our Neighborhood Watch program. That may sound a little confusing, but what we'll be doing is we've been approved to bring back 2 officers out of our existing deployment of personnel who will be riding motorcycles. And as part of their duties, not only will be doing traffic stops for education and enforcement, they will also be working with our neighborhood watch groups and other community members regarding traffic complaints, speeding, not stopping for stop signs, and they'll work with those neighbors to reduce those incidents of traffic problems. And also, most significantly, we're trying to reduce injury traffic collisions. One of the things that we have been able to do is we've had an effect on reducing traffic collisions overall by only 11%. We have had 5 more injury traffic collisions since January regarding injuries, so we're trying to focus on those things. Our officers have been writing more tickets. Initially, when COVID struck, officers were trying to reduce interaction with people, and it got to the point where that just wasn't working. People were starting to drive again, and we started to do an uptick in traffic enforcement, so more tickets. And we're continuing that. And then with our traffic survey that was done by Parks and Public Works, Director Throne, we've been able to utilize LiDAR or our radar type system for more traffic and enforcement. Also, if you've noticed, we've reduced the traffic speed on San Marino and also Sierra Madre. Sierra Madre is now 35 and San Marino is now 25. And hoping that will reduce some of the traffic injuries and some of the bicycle accidents. If you have any further questions, I'm available. If not, that concludes my report.
Vice Chair Hunter, question?
I have no questions, Al.
Commissioner
Chief,
Loeffler?
this is Pete Leffler.
Yes, sir.
It sounds like we now have 2 motor officers. Is that correct?
No, not yet. We have to wait for the budget to be finally approved. That hopefully will be on the 26th. And once that's in place, we will be purchasing new motorcycles. We've already got a 30 to 45 day promise from the vendor to get the motorcycles here. And we're looking to schedule our officers in a motor school or a refresher school. We have one person who's interested, was a motor officer in South Pasadena before they came here. So maybe they'll just have to have a refresher course. So once that is in place, hopefully within 60, 90 days, we'll have the motor officers working, but in the meantime, we'll be working on the traffic safety program.
Great, good to hear. Thank you.
Commissioner Ramirez, any questions?
Chief, do we have any issues that arose out of our recent protest? Everything goes smoothly?
Yes, it did. I was going to wait for that, but I can go ahead and talk about the march. We were very fortunate to work with the other city departments, other police departments nearby, and we met with the organizers. We listened to them. They provided us a kind of a foundation, a design of what they were going to do. And we concurred with the recommendations of walking and protesting down the median of Huntington Drive from San Gabriel. They originally had wanted to walk all the way to Garfield, where In-N-Out is, or Atlantic. And when we reminded them that the median gets awful small once you get past Oak Knoll, they agreed to stop there. They had a rally at the end. It went well. We had one woman that went into traffic, so we ensured that she had a safe place to exercise her First Amendment rights, which was our goal, was to make sure we facilitated those rights. And about 30 minutes after that, the march and the discussion with the protesters dissipated and everyone left. No arrests, no intervention by police. Everybody seemed to, well, everyone was able to get their point across and have their voices heard, which was the important part.
Great. Nice.
Commissioner Bozell, anything?
Nothing from me, Al, thanks.
If I may, I would just like to commend Chief Encontro, his team, as well as Chief Rueda's folks who were involved, along with, I believe, 2 neighboring police forces in being there to ensure a safe and meaningful march for the people that wanted to participate. If you didn't get to see the march yourself, I think you would have been very proud of our public safety officials that were involved. They were dressed in a manner that was conducive to communication rather than a confrontational attire. And I think because of that, at least in part, and their willingness to interact with the marchers, it went very safely. And as Chief says, people seem to get their point across and then went about the remainder of their day.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair Bo. I just want to commend my staff from Commander Blondet to Sergeant Cervantes and others that put a plan together, the assistance of Chief Rueda and his staff, the South Pasadena and Alhambra Police Departments, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and then the marchers themselves. Our goal was not to be seen, not to be involved. This was their opportunity to speak and their opportunity to be heard about a very important topic that's affecting our country. And I believe we had a success. So thank you very much.
If there are no other questions or comments, we'll move to the fire department report.
Al, I have one, just maybe the chief could share with us what we're hearing about defunding police departments. What does that gain and why are they doing that? Is he still there?
I think you're on mute, Chief.
I think I'm on mute.
The chief is still
Chief is on mute. Chief Encontro.
A moment to think of it, to think through his answer.
Yeah, the chief's muted.
Chief, would you like to come back to that question a little later in the program?
Yeah, I know.
Evidently.
I think Aaron's calling him.
Are you ready for the fire department, or did you want to?
No, I was trying to get Chief Encontra, who seemingly isn't hearing us. Commissioner Leffler had asked a question. I don't think, and Chief Encontra didn't respond.
I'm sorry. I thought you were looking for Chief Rueda. Apologize. We've been muting. We're in the same room, so we've been muting each other.
Commissioner Leffler, do you want to repeat your question?
Chief, maybe you could explain very briefly what it is we're hearing about the defunding of police departments, what that is and why they're doing it. I don't understand how that gains anything for the issues at hand.
Well, I've been trying to read what is being said. I've been looking at different websites. I've been reading different articles, and what the intention, from what I understand, is that too much money is going to law enforcement, that additional monies need to go to social services, to social justice, to help the homeless and the mentally ill. Some departments, at the direction of their city councils, have been transferring money from the department budget to be given to social services that will fund programs for juveniles, will also fund programs for the homeless and for the mentally ill. Some of that funding right now we are given to assist with the homeless, and because there really is no one there to do the work. You may have been seeing some of that. You may have also been seeing that the mentally ill, well, there's not enough people from the Department of Mental Health to assist us and be available. And we'd love to have mental health teams. That may be some of it, and some of it is just they don't want law enforcement, period.
So would that be considered they're punishing, they want the public to see that the departments are being punished, and this is what we're doing, we're taking funding away, and that's only the cost of the problem. So I don't get it.
I haven't heard enough. I haven't heard all the proposals there that are in depth and vetted by all parties. So it's a little difficult to say that it is a punishment. But when you look at actions where within 1 week, someone has, like for instance, New York PD, they have a $6.6 billion budget. They want to take $1 billion away from them. LAPD, they want to take 5% or more, which is roughly 150 million from their budget, to programs that don't exist yet. And I think it's very important that we continue to listen to the people involved, the people who are raising these issues, and that we all have the opportunity to speak and make sure that we have good programs that are properly funded and utilizing the best people to help those in need.
Thank you, Chief.
Before we leave the subject, have any of the commissioners, or for that matter, city staff that's part of our meeting, had any inquiries from any citizens about reducing our funding available to our police department?
Yeah, I heard they just want to get rid of them entirely.
Here in town, in San Marino?
I'm teasing now.
Oh.
Actually, Al, I'm writing a
anything.
paper on defunding. I've been sending to the chief some of the articles that our firm has been writing, because we obviously represent quite a few law enforcement agencies. And the one I'm just reviewing it right now, I'll be sending to the chief tomorrow, is talking about defunding law enforcement. But for some, it also means disbanding law enforcement.
Right.
And we've heard that Minneapolis is thinking of completely eliminating or dismantling their department. Compton did it many years ago, and the sheriff's department took over. Camden, New Jersey is another example where they disbanded and start over. So there's a lot of things going on. So when I send this to the chief, And if the chief deems it appropriate, we can send it to the other members just so you get conversant with the issues that are being bandied about. So in the event that you're asked by a citizen, you're going to have some knowledge. So I'm going to be getting this out to the chief tomorrow.
And I'll forward that. I'll forward the information.
Yes.
Thank you. That could be very helpful. All right, can we move on to Chief Rueda?
Good evening, commissioners. Just being at the march, I can tell you the professionalism of our police department was unmatched. They did an outstanding job. I have to hand it to them. Just with respect to the fire department activities, it seems like ages since we've actually communicated. I look back at our response to the coronavirus. Our first public messaging was on February 27th to the community, alerting people to the virus and the potential for spread, and that just seems like ages ago. We did activate our emergency operations center. Our city did proclaim a state of emergency, and it has been nonstop since then, both the communication effort to the public, ensuring our public safety personnel and our city employees are safe and equipped with PPE and responding appropriately to requests. It has involved also ensuring with the proclaimed emergency that any expenses by the city are at least being eligible for reimbursement. So it has really been a full-time job, and I can't tell you, just a couple of the most successful efforts have been our outreach to the community, making sure that our residents are well-informed and educated. And the second was the establishment of our resident support hotline, which for some was a real lifeline in being able to obtain items that would have been considered normal pre-February, and now for some to get out of the house and actually obtain those items have proved to be very difficult. I think our recreation department, married with the EOC staff, have really done a great job. I don't know of another city that you could pick up the phone and ask for help getting hearing aid batteries, and that afternoon somebody's coming to your door, knocking a lot of times. Hearing aid batteries were dead, but and get that kind of support from the city. So I think with the support of the council and the city manager, I think our response has been excellent from all the departments. And on the response end, just our number of, we call them, they're a sick to call. So when they come into our dispatch center, our dispatch center will question and attempt to identify somebody that has potential coronavirus concerns. And if they meet that criteria, they put that out as a sick to call. Those calls have actually been declining for the last 2 months, which is good news. However, the county has reported over the last week actually increasing numbers, and our R number, which is our rate of infection spread, actually increasing, which is bad news. But the number of folks that we're seeing in town that are very sick has actually been decreasing. And I've mentioned this to some of you, but just for the firefighters and sometimes the police officers that have encountered people that are very sick, it can be a very, very apprehensive call for them, just because it's unknown, it's invisible, and people are going home to their families. So I do have to hand it to them. They've done a really good job of stepping up and I think protecting our residents. I did provide you a report with our activities, and if you have any questions, I'm available for those.
Commissioners?
Chief,
Jane?
Chief, shall I assume that none of our department has become ill from any of the interactions with city people?
You would be correct. The early ordering of personal protective equipment really left us in a position with no shortages for either police or fire early on. The donations we've received from the community have helped. And just the early stockpiling, I think, was really a great opportunity for us to keep our folks free from any disease. And actually, we have not had any employees in any department track the infection. So I think a little bit of luck, and then early on producing protocols for our employees and making sure they're wearing their PPE.
Great. Excellent job.
Anyone else with a question? May I ask 2 quick questions, please, Chief? You mentioned we're accumulating information that might allow us to recover some of our costs. Do you know what the status of actually applying for recovery is?
We have actually, one of the functions of the Emergency Operations Center is to track our expenditures related to both the coronavirus and the civil unrest. So both of those were declared disasters in our state, and we have already submitted claims for both of those. And the coronavirus claim is ongoing because that disaster proclamation is still open.
Is that something your department or the task force is managing, or is the finance division handling that?
The finance department, in conjunction with the EOC staff, is working to pull those costs from all city departments, including overtime and then emergency purchases.
Great. Good to hear. One other question. I noticed that we continue to experience overtime to cover for the injured gentleman from South Pass. Do you have a sense on when that person will return, the shared command person that we're incurring the overtime for?
He actually returned to duty last month.
Oh, good.
And yeah, he had an unfortunate knee injury and infection, but he is back at work.
Great. All right, well, thank you. Shall we move on to the Public Works Department report? Director Throm?
Thank you, Chair Bogue. I did earlier today send you a memo, so I'm just going to quickly go over some of the things, and I'm expecting that Ms. McGee will enter that into our record so that we have that. I wanted to let you know that the Rose Arbor that we started on Valentine's Day was completed at the end of last week. And so we're very happy about that. We're looking to have some sort of event as soon as it's safe to do so. Currently, we can't host public gatherings, but we will do something when it's clear that we can. We restarted work on the Lacey Park restroom. We got to a settlement with the surety, and so that work began today. We've got some other projects that since the last time we met, we actually accomplished and started several more projects which are listed there. There's some studies that will be coming to you later this summer, the traffic circulation study and the stormwater condition assessment. We're also going to be doing our biennial pavement condition survey. We did spend the last 4 months for for the maintenance folks on a reduced schedule in order to keep our folks actively working at the same time as far apart as possible. So we've really been focusing on street repairs and those portions of our park system, which is Lacey Park, that get the most public use. So off at the edges of our park system is starting to get a little shaggy. And that's primarily a function of the reduced schedule. But we're hoping to get back to normal as soon as it's safe to do so. As both chiefs sort of mentioned, the City Council is going to be completing its annual budget process on June 26th, which includes our operating budgets, our capital expenditure plan for next fiscal year, and a 5-year plan. I know the Chief Fincontro is very excited about his motor officers. I'm actually more excited about the 6 patrol cars. We did get approval from the council that on July 1st, the chief and I can roll up our sleeves and place an order for 6 patrol cars, get them built, get them outfitted with all of the important stuff that the chief and his officers need, and hopefully put them into service probably in about 4 or 5 months. It really depends on when we can get those vehicles delivered and when they can go out to the outfitters. So that's the highlights of my last 4 months. Thank you.
Commissioners, questions for Director Throne?
I make sure I understood that correctly. Director Throne, the 6 patrol cars have been approved by council, or are they part of the budget approval?
They are part of the budget approval process. So on June 26th, if their discussions at the March 27th capital workshop remain the same, then we can begin purchasing vehicles on July 1st.
Right. Director Throne or either of the chiefs, since the commission didn't have an opportunity to be part of the budgeting process as we normally would, it's my understanding that at our July meeting, you're going to review your budgets with us. Is that correct? I see.
Yes, sir. That's what we'll be doing.
Some heads being nodded. Great. And in that process, would you also share with us the capital expenditures and equipment replacement budgets that have been approved as well? I know
yes.
Interested in that.
Certainly,
Great.
Chair Bogue. The meeting that you were supposed to have in March had all of that information in it,
Right.
and we were that close to having that meeting and getting your input, and we missed out just by about a handful of days. I have the information, and we will bring it to you in July.
Yeah. Just so that the other commissioners are aware, the mayor has made a point in the last council meeting when they were discussing the budget that the commissions, which ours being one, that didn't have an opportunity to review the budget or to provide input, that the commissions will be asked to review the budgets essentially after the fact, but both as an educational process and so that we are prepared to provide support and any input on a go-forward basis. So you may want to go online if you haven't already done so, take a look at the budget proposals, or maybe it would be possible to include the approved budgets as an attachment to the July 5th agenda. Could we do that so that all the commissioners will have copies?
Yes.
All right, great.
Director Throne, I have a question. The medians, are they being watered now? Because I noticed some of the grass is yellow, but then I see the sprinklers going off, and so are they being watered or not because of the drought?
They are being watered. We have a irrigation system that as we start to turn it on, we then have to spend some time repairing it. So we're in the process of doing that, but it is watered. It is being watered. on a
Okay.
regular basis.
All right. It just there's a lot of yellow grass
Mhm.
on the medians.
Director Throne, perhaps I should know the answer to this question, but what's the status of any of the projects that are being funded by 710 money?
The city council did not specifically include that project in this coming year's capital program. They're going to wait until Metro provides us with a funding agreement, and then they will make a determination as to what level to fund it. Metro has not yet provided us with a funding agreement, and during this last 4 months, we've been preoccupied with other higher, more urgent projects, projects that we're paying for that we're interested in more than that project. So there's some work that I still have to complete to submit to Metro before they can send us a funding agreement for the council to review. So those projects are on a more extended schedule. They're less urgent than our street resurfacing project, completing our restroom. Obviously, we just completed the Rose Arbor. Those are the more San Marino-centric projects that we're working on currently.
And there's no deadlines coming up for Metro to get things done before funding agreements are no longer allowed or money is no longer doled out.
Excuse me. The only risk that we may encounter is that the projects will be funded toward the end of the funding cycle. And currently Metro is unsure how funding is all going to be put together because the last 3 or 4 months have really impacted their revenue stream. And they have other projects that they believe are much more important than the 710 projects. For instance, all of the Metro Rail projects for the 2028 Olympics. So they've not yet landed on what their ultimate funding is going to be and whether or not they push projects way out into the future with a promissory note that says, we'll fund your project, 7 years from now, and we'll, escalate the dollar amount based on an inflationary factor. They're still not quite sure how they're going to do this. And agencies that are very gung-ho and are motivated by their projects, they've already made their submittals, and we're taking a little bit longer time than they are.
Michael, I have one more question. I noticed several streets, they have 1 foot wide trenches, maybe 30 feet long, being dug. What's going on with those?
That is curb and gutter replacement as part of our overlay project. So we go in and we replace a certain amount of curb and gutter. And when they do that, they remove about a 1 foot strip, a 1 foot wide strip of asphalt so they can form the lip of the gutter. And then they backfill that with asphalt. And then the contractor will come back in a couple of weeks or in several weeks and mill that and then resurface over the top of it, and you won't see it again.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Director Throne? If not, we'll move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is approval of the minutes of the meeting that took place on February 17th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Jump in on one, yeah.
Second.
Commissioner Bozell moves to approve.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Leffler. All in favor, say aye or wait.
Aye.
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 Okay, great. Thank you. Now, we have 3 additional items on the agenda, and they all primarily fall into Chief Encantro's area. So if I may, I will ask him to address items 5, 6, if he wants to spend more time on it. I believe he already addressed it earlier, and 7.
Chair Bogue?
Yes.
It's actually just the one item. It's The San Marino Police Department use of force policies.
Okay, I must be looking at an older copy of the
The
agenda.
draft, yeah, he actually included those other items in his department report.
I was going to say, they sort of seem like we've already covered them, so.
Yes.
Apologize for that. Look at that. All right. So we only have one additional item. It's item 5, and it's a discussion of police department use of force, our policies, and any thoughts with regard to any changes that might want to be considered. Chief?
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair Bogue and Commission. When I prepared this report, I was looking at some documents that were coming from different public groups and that were being raised to other police departments across the country, including within LA County. And as the president of the LA County Police Chiefs Association, we had quite a bit of discussion about some of these use of force issues that have come up within the past 2 weeks, and how do we address them? And these are very common questions by members of different communities, and then a few people within our community. One thing to really think about is the fact that policing in California is different than it is in other parts of the country. We have a strong training program. We have a professional approach to policing. We have a strong community relations or community policing plan. And we also, in my opinion, that our attention to what is most important, those things that can cause problems, such as use of force, such as pursuits, have legislative remedies that have been put in place by the state, and also by police professional organizations, California Chiefs Association, California Police Officers Association, and even my association here in Los Angeles, the County Police Chiefs. So when you see organizations such as Campaign Zero, or as I indicated in this report, 8 Can't Wait, they are taking a national look at policing. For instance, the restraint that was used on George Floyd. 41 years in law enforcement, I was never taught that method. In fact, I was always told you don't do that. And there'll be other things that you'll see by different police departments that I was never taught, and I have never taught in my career as both as a tactics instructor, as an instructor on use of force, as someone who's been part of organizations or groups that put together use of force policies when I was with LAPD. At the beginning of this year, January 1st, 2020, there was Assembly Bill 392, which changed our use of force in the state of California. And I'll read this, but it's in the report, and I think it's important. It says, the circumstances of justifiable homicide change from when overcoming actual resistance to the execution of some legal process or in the discharge of any other legal duty, to the homicide results from a peace officer's use of force that is compliance with Penal Code Section 835. And those sections and why it's different than other places, use of force is an authority conferred on police officers is a serious responsibility. In our training and teaching of use of force, we will often tell our students, our fellow officers, that police officers can do two things that no one else can. I can permanently deprive you of your liberty. I can write a report, I can testify in court that could result in you being sentenced to jail for the rest of your life. Also, I have a legal ability to use deadly force and take your life. There's no other profession in this country that can do those two things. So having this as number one in 835 is important because it really emphasizes to our sworn employees, to our officers, that you have powers that no one else does. And it's extremely important to have reverence for life and to make sure that you are honest in deed and word. And so when the use of force policy for the state was changed to this, it was a good change. It made sense to us. Deadly force should only be used when necessary. We understand that. We understand that it has to be used only when necessary. Use of force decisions are to be evaluated carefully and from a reasonable officer perspective. And that means we look at an officer, does that make sense? Is this part of our training? This part of our experience? Is this what we expect of our officers? When we look at what occurred in Minneapolis, you can ask yourself, is that what a reasonable officer would do? And you need to draw your own conclusions. I can't draw a conclusion, although I have a personal feeling, but I can't draw my conclusion because there's still due process. And that must be remembered. Our force has to be objectively reasonable force. And that's been found in courts, and that's been accepted here. And we look at the totality of the circumstances. What all was going on? What do we know about the person? What kind of crime were they involved in? What were their actions? What caused us to use force, whether it is non-lethal force or lethal force? And there's several other parts of the statute that are important, and those changed. No other state has that. And then there's a secondary bill that's coming on January 1st, 2021. And that is the second part that's, to me, one of the most important parts because it includes training. And it includes that use of force policy is going to be consistent. But it's the training that is there, the de-escalation training. That is part of our training here in San Marino. Also, the training in bias awareness. We have done that before, and in fact, we have training next month for all of our personnel through the Museum of Tolerance at the Simon Wiesenthal Center. I've been through their program 3 times, and it talks about understanding implicit bias and what bias, how does it affect your judgment? So we were doing all of those things. So one of the things this 8 Can't Wait organization had, and then today it changed because and things are changing daily in the environment we're in. But some of the things that were discussed is required de-escalation training. Well, we do have de-escalation training. That's part of the law. That's part of what police officers' standards and training requires. We have a duty to intervene. And what that means is if an officer sees misconduct, if an officer sees force that's being utilized by another officer that is not right, that is not lawful, that is not within policy, they have a duty to stop what's going on. And we do that, and we talk about that. There's a requirement they've asked about a warning before shooting. There are times when that is done. And when you have the opportunity during de-escalation and you're speaking to a suspect who may be armed, maybe not armed, but has the ability to cause harm to you or others, then you are telling them, stop what you're doing. You could be hurt. That's what we do now for less lethal, when we're using less lethal weapons. We will tell people before we use a taser, stop what you're doing. You're going to be hit with a taser, and that's going to hurt, so stop what you're doing. But there are times when a warning cannot be done. If I'm searching for a suspect, I'm going down a hallway, and a suspect pops out of a doorway. He's holding a gun. The gun is leveled at myself or my partners. There's no way for me to do a warning. And I will fire to protect myself and protect others, and that's what you're allowed to do. Requiring comprehensive reporting. We have a system in place, as do many departments of California, almost all departments of California, where there is a comprehensive reporting. where all witnesses are interviewed, where a independent person a supervisor does the investigation of the use of force. And this could be something as simple as a complaint of force. When we have a lethal use of force, we have the Los Angeles County Sheriff's investigate that for us. We also have oversight during that investigation by the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office to make sure that this is an independent investigation. And there's all different levels of review through the district attorney making a final determination whether or not the officer's actions were lawful. There's another investigation where we will make a determination if an administrative investigation, where we'll make a determination if the officer's actions were administratively approved or not, were their tactics proper, were their use of a firearm, were their use of drawing and exhibiting that firearm, was that within policy? And our policies are put together by a company called Lexipol. And we use the same company that nearly all smaller departments, medium-sized departments use throughout the state of California and other places. There was a request of banning chokeholds and strangleholds. We don't use either one of those. If we do have at a lethal force level, the use of a carotid control hold where pressure is placed on the side of the neck and it reduces the blood flow and it would render the person unconscious. But it's at the same level as an officer making a decision to fire their weapon. There's nothing else. We wouldn't do it if someone was yelling at us, someone was throwing things at us. It doesn't meet that threshold. So it's always at a deadly force level. Ban shooting at moving vehicles. Our policy talks about shooting at moving vehicles. We understand that if you are to shoot and step out into the street and fire at a vehicle, if you were lucky enough to strike the driver and the vehicle stopped, where would it stop? What would happen? Where would that vehicle go? Because the driver may become incapacitated. However, the vehicle is going to continue. Since many of us put that rule in place where generally they're dissuaded from shooting at moving vehicles, we've now had within our world the use of vehicles as a weapon by terrorists. We've seen that in New York. We've seen that in London. We've seen it in many places. So that's why it's generally dissuaded from firing at a moving vehicle, because sometimes that happens. You don't want to place yourself in front of a vehicle, telling it to stop and the driver to stop. That just doesn't make sense. That's not tactically sound. So we want to look and make sure that we don't do that. And that's in our policy. And then the final one was a use of force continuum. When I started in law enforcement in 1979, 41 years ago, we had something that looked like a set of steps. And on the top part of the steps, a simple line diagram, was the tool. And it always started with verbalization. And that would be talking someone into jail who's cooperative, all the way up to a deadly force where it'd be your firearm. And then that was a suspect attempting to harm someone or harm you. And then there were steps in between. The problem was when you look at that, an officer or a person will look at that and go, okay, well, if they do this, then you can only do that. If they do this, then you can only do that. But what happens in a real life use of force incident is you have to constantly verbalize, you have to constantly evaluate whether or not the technique or the tool is effective in rendering this person to be arrested and to be controlled. I can walk up to someone and perhaps it is at a level where I'll use my baton. And if I strike him multiple times with the baton and the problem is continuing, the attacks are continuing, then that baton is not effective. So I've got to be constantly thinking about what other tools are effective. Or it could be in the middle of these strikes that as I'm continuing to speak to the person, they start to understand, they stop what they're doing, and then I stop what I'm doing. But I'm constantly aware of what else is going on. And I'm constantly aware of what the person's reactions are to the different tools. So a continuum, a linear type line, or a linear design isn't always going to work. It must be something that's more circular in manner. It has to be something where you're constantly evaluating the situation. Some of you in business maybe, or if you've had military background, have heard of OODA loop. And that's where you're looking, you're assessing, you're determining what's the appropriate tool, you're making decisions, you're evaluating, and then you may go back to the whole thing all over again, because you have to be able to think and understand what's going on and what's the most effective. We are doing these things, and they're effective. And we believe that it's important that we continue to use what we are doing now. Some statistics. So I looked at the last 5 years of use of force history within the San Marino Police Department. In the past 5 years, we've used force 24 times. In that same time, we've had over 126,000 contacts with the public. So our use of force percentage is 0.02%. So we're using force 0.02% of the time out of all of these different encounters with the public. Of those, we had no injury at all 14 times. And we've had complained of injuries 4 times. We've had abrasions 4 times. We've had lacerations 2 times. None of this required hospitalization. And one of the lacerations, the person was involved in a traffic collision before we encountered them. So to determine whether or not the laceration occurred pre or post was difficult for us. The primary method of force, and these numbers are not going to add up, because within one incident, you can have multiple types of force. Remember how I talked about constantly assessing, using the different tools in your toolbox, constantly escalating or escalating depending upon what occurs. I apologize for the feedback. I'm not sure. We use control techniques, which are just twisting someone's hand behind their back or something minor like that, holding on to a twist lock or wrist lock is what the old terminology was. That was 20 times. We've taken people to the ground 6 different times. Let me see if that helps. We've displayed the taser twice. We've had to tackle someone 3 times. We've used a firm grip, which is merely my hand grabbing hold of someone's arm 3 times. We've applied a hobble 4 times. And what that is a nylon webbing that's used to control the legs. So they can't kick, they can't run. One time we did use a water hose. But we used it in a sense, that was a person that was up on a roof, creating a hazard, and we thought about using a hose to get them cold and wet, and they would give themselves up. Fortunately, it didn't work out that way. In the end, they tried to get off the roof, and they fell. And we've only used a taser 1 time. So those are the only forms of force that we've used. We constantly train with this. Instructors that are certified, they go to post-training for this. I'm very pleased with the percentage of force that's been used throughout the 5 years. And I'm proud of what our men and women do each and every day. For the most, they talk people to jail. And that's what I remember from my training officer, Bob Smith, serial number 13157, back in 1979. And that's what he taught me. We talk people to jail. That's what we want to do. If you have any questions, I'm available. And thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about what we do.
Chief, I have a question. And this isn't necessarily directed towards your PD, but generally in the context of overall PDs, you talk about a lot of training just now. Training versus personality. And will any amount of training offset the personality sometimes that we see in some officers in some parts of the country, that it's just, just a question of whether you can ever train around that and teach them not to do what they do, or is that just not going to happen?
Well, that's a great question. And, you know, I'm prone to telling stories. So when I was learning how to ride a horse for the LAPD, our trainer had been a partner of mine in SWAT. And he said, you know, I asked him, how is it, would you rather have people know how to ride a horse and then come in the mountain unit? He goes, no. I'd rather have people that are good cops, know how to do their job, and I'll teach you how to ride a horse. So it's the same thing when we hire. We have people go through a very thorough hiring process. We have a long training process through probation. They meet with me and I ask them about themselves. I ask them, what kind of books are you reading? What kind of movies do you like? And part of that is I want to know their personality a little bit better. I want to know what motivates them. I ask them, why do you really want to be a cop? Because everyone says, well, I want to help people. But tell me about it. What about the job you really like? And understanding that personality and hiring someone who understands the importance of service over anything else. And that's what we do. Very few times out of the day or out of the year do we actually do protecting. It's mostly providing service. So it is, the training reinforces the selection of an outstanding person to be a police officer.
Thank you.
Al, you're on mute.
Chair, you're mute.
I was trying to make sure that my microphone wasn't causing the problem that I keep hearing it. I'm relying on it to read my lips. Other commissioners, Commissioner Leffler, any questions? Commissioner Chang?
No, that was a good presentation, Chief.
Commissioner Ramirez?
No, I think the chief did a great job. There's a lot of knee-jerk reactions going on right now across the country. I've talked to a lot of agencies and a lot of chiefs over the last 2 weeks. Nobody's happy with what's happened in Minneapolis. But I think how the chief has explained this should show that our city is in a great position and that hopefully no one will ask us to change anything that was already on paper. I think our policies are more than adequate. And as the chief explained, you never want shall nots because there's always an exception. Mm-hmm. So I think the chief, I think you covered everything that I would expect you to have covered.
Commissioner Bozell?
No questions. Excellent report, Chief. Thank you very much.
I also want to thank the Chief for taking the time to put these thoughts both into the paper document that he provided and taking the time this evening to share with us, because a good portion of the roles that the two chiefs and director play are educators of us as members of the commission and members of the community. And although we don't have any members of the community with us this evening, hopefully I know that you are recording this meeting, and I assume it will be available online for members of the community to access.
That is correct.
Thank you. Right. Are there other issues that any of the commissioners would like to address this evening? If not, we have reached the end of the agenda, I believe. I need to check though, because I'm working off the wrong agenda.
That was the last item.
That's the last item. Wonderful. Do I have a motion of thanks and adjournment?
Thank you, and I move to adjourn.
All right, thank you, Tim.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Our next meeting will be on Monday, the 5th of July. We will, among other things, review the budgets for the 3 departments. And again, before we adjourn, a reminder that we will be changing the commission leadership for the July meeting. I believe we agreed to that in January. So we would hope that the first item on the agenda would be to agree on leadership for the next period. So I'd ask you to all give some thought to where we need to go.
Al, that's July 6th, not 5th, correct?
Pardon me, you're correct. It is Monday, July 6th.
And Al, is that scheduled as a virtual meeting as opposed to an in-person meeting?
It doesn't say in my copy of the draft of the agenda, but my guess is it will probably be virtual. But hopefully by soon we'll be able to meet as the council is doing. They're meeting in kind of a combination where they are socially distanced in the room, and then the meeting is broadcast and people join them over the air. Can we look into that for the July meeting as a possibility, Chief?
Yes, sir, we can look at it.
They're preferable. I like to do it virtual. I'll be out of town, so it'd be easier for me just to zoom in.
Okay. Well, the way the council's worked, councilmen, even though some have been face-to-face, others have participated virtually. So the meeting would be kind of on Zoom, but maybe 3 or 4 of the pictures would be in the same room.
Perfect.
Well, again, to the chiefs, Director Throne, and our staff, thank you so much for all you do for our community and for all that you do for us to help us in our role as commissioners. We very much appreciate it, and wish you all the best.
Be safe.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, and good night.
Have a good night.
So, night.
You probably better on this last.
It's